All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Hoops with Noel. This is episode 8. We got the playoffs amongst us, and in today's episode, we're going to talk about the first round games that we've been seeing, and the first one that came to our minds when we were watching that was really interesting was the Bucks. Heat game and went to overtime, I believe. It was very close. And the first part we noticed was Giannis Antetokounmpo struggling shooting wise. He had a lot of rebounds and assists. But guys, I want to get your thoughts on this. I'll start with you, Nolan. What were your thoughts about Giannis, and should the Bucks be worried about his game one performance?
Yeah, so in terms of Giannis, probably the biggest thing that stuck out to me in terms of struggles, maybe, is I just was very confused by the fact of how often he takes the ball up. I think Giannis is a very special player, one of the best athletes in the NBA, but he's not the best passer. He's not the best of playmakers facilitating. So I was very confused with him taking the ball up. And then when he get the ball down low, I had some worries, honestly, about his touch. I think there are players of his size and working down low, I think, have a lot better touch. I can bring up other players like Jokic or Embiid or whatnot, but I think his touch is something that did worry me if I was a Bucks fan. What about you boys, though?
Yeah, I'll take it next. I was pretty worried about Giannis Antetokounmpo, and it's not even that he had a bad game because everybody has bad games in the playoffs. The Heat are a good team, and obviously there was a lot of positives that I'm sure we can talk about in a bit about the Bucks. It's two things that worried me. It's the fact that this is the third straight year that we've seen Giannis be defended the same style of way, and we've seen that style of defending work against him. The Bucks, with Giannis, it's like, what are you gonna do? And I know that Coach Bud, he doesn't run a lot of different plays for the Bucks to manufacture offense, and that's really been a complaint about what the Bucks do offensively. But I'd argue a lot of that has to do with what can you really do with Giannis in the playoffs. Like you brought up how you got to put him at the top of the key. Well, you can maybe run a couple pick and rolls with him as a roller, but like against Bam Adebayo, that's not the easiest thing to do like 100 times in a game or 100% of the time. So then you put him at the top of the key because you can't put him on the wing because you can't trust his jump shot. You can't really put him in the high post because what is he going to do out of there if he's forced to attack offensively? You can't put him in the low post because even though he showed improvement in his post game this year, once again, just you can't trust his turnaround jump shot or his right shoulder hook shot or his left shoulder hook shot. So you again have to just put him at the top of the key. They build the wall. He's always a tick late and a tick slow, in my opinion, of making the pass once he recognizes the wall. He always goes into the wall and then he makes the pass maybe a second late. And that's where, even though he's a really good passer, I would say he's obviously not a natural point guard and a facilitator. Because if you watch, like, for example, Luka Doncic earlier today, every time the double team would come, Luka Doncic got rid of the ball right on time to the open guy. And it's not like Luka Doncic got an assist on the play or anything, but it changed the complexion of the game because you got a Kristaps Porzingis poster on Kawhi Leonard that comes off the fact that Luka Doncic just gets rid of the ball on time and ready to go. And that's where with Giannis, it's the same thing all over again. It's you build the wall. He's a take late to pass the ball. And it's just that can he do something when you build that wall and it's like, can he have an in-between game? Okay, when they're building the wall around him, can you put him down in the post and can he score 10, 15 points on Bam Adebayo on the post? And I think those are the reasons why I'm concerned. It's not because I don't think the Bucks can win this series or anything like that. It's the fact that we're 3 straight years into watching one of the best players in the NBA, a 2-time MVP, a defensive player of the year, one of the maybe all-time great players already, and we're seeing the same exact thing happen now for the 3rd straight time in the playoffs. And I don't want to write it off after one game, but the way it looked, the way he once again kind of fell apart from the free throw line, which he's done in the last 2 playoffs, it's concerning to me.
Yeah, so I'm kind of with both you guys on this. And I did want to mention what you brought up, Vish, with the free throws. I know a lot of people clown LeBron for his free throws not being the best, but Giannis's are legitimately like a centers where it's last year he shot in the 50s. Today, crunch time, missing left and right. He got a 10-second violation. I've never seen that at the end of a game ever. That is just insane to me. But yeah, the free throws were worrying to me, and the fact that even at the end of the game, when he had the ball in his hands, he wasn't looking to like actively get it to one of their good free throw shooters. Like, I feel like that would be something that, okay, call a timeout so he's not shooting free throws at the end of the game. And then with his shooting, I think if his like turnaround jump shot or like step back fadeaway was developed, I think that would be the one area where he can realistically get that a lot better and would help him so much, because being able to do that, he has a counter punch to being walled off and stuff. But with that not being available in his like arsenal as of now, he's very, very limited. And even a lot of the points he was getting would come off of like, say, Drew Holiday or Middleton taking the ball up on like a fast break, or they had a man up opportunity, and it would basically just be he would just cut to the lane, and once he's got a foot in the lane, you're not stepping in front of him, but you can't consistently do that every possession, and that's where I'm worried for them and how they're actually going to manufacture offense, because besides that, it's a lot of contested shots from Chris Middleton or Drew Holiday making an insane defensive play and getting out on the fast break. So I'm thinking like, okay, the Heat shot their top two players, Butler and Adebayo, shot horribly. I would be very surprised if they shot that poorly again. And yet you still only won by 2 and went to OT. What's going to happen when Jimmy Butler doesn't shoot 4 for 20 or whatever he shot? That's very problematic for me. And they weren't really getting too many easy buckets. But that's just my thoughts on it. And I do think it is very concerning for the Bucks, and it looks exactly like what happened last year. Now they did win, and their roster is better, but I don't know if they could keep playing the same exact style of basketball and coming away with victories.
No, I'll give you this before you go. Just 1 second. So the Bucks shot 5 for 31 from 3. Right, they're gonna shoot better. People like Bryn Forbes isn't gonna not make a 3 in a playoff game, but I don't expect the Bucks to come in the next game and make 23s. And why I say that is because it's been a consistent theme throughout the last 3 years in the playoffs that the Milwaukee Bucks just don't shoot the ball that well in the playoffs. Like, we look at Giannis, we look at the Wall. Part of the reason the Wall works so well is because the guys around them that make shots all year in the regular seasons just don't knock them down. The Connaughtons, this year it'll be PJ Tucker, Bryn Forbes, DiVincenzo, the guys that should be Splash Mountain, the guys that should be shooting 40% from 3 shoot like 35% from 3 in the playoffs. And that 5% makes a massive difference in terms of the spacing in Giannis's game. So do you think my skepticism is valid about their shooting and the 5 for 31 and it's just a one-off game and a bad game? Or do you look at it and say all of these are compounded issues that start from Giannis and we should really be worried about the Bucks?
I would say it's more on the valid side of things that it has happened. And I think the biggest rationale for that is just the trends in the last 2 years, the playoffs, and the fact that we're only one game in, so small sample size, but it did look more or less the same in the one game we've seen today. So in that regard, in the three-point shooting, I think it's very valid. And the only thing I can really think of, if I was scheming with Giannis, if I was Coach Bud, what I might do is you have because I think Drew Holiday is such an improvement from the Bledsoe last year. And you have 2 legitimate people who can kind of handle the ball and facilitate, Middleton and Drew Holiday. I would try to get Giannis more off-ball movement. I don't really think he has to be a facilitator, because if he can get anywhere near open, he is probably the most athletic guy in the league, if not one of them. And if you can get like easy points, get him in his rhythm, not making him – because I really think that the standstill Giannis offense is just – going to be the Achilles heel of this Bucks team coming down the stretch too. Because if he gets fouled, like Blake said, he's probably not going to make the free throw. Might get a 10-second violation. I am totally with you. I've never seen that in my life. I didn't even know what the call was.
Yeah.
So my opinion on that, Vish, is you were way more on the valid side of things and not being too much of a skeptic. What are your thoughts, though, Blake, on that?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Like the offense, the fact that it's just looks the exact same, and having Holiday there will help a lot. I think we already saw that today, and just he manufactured points on his own, whether that was scoring. His floater is insane. Like I feel like most of his points came off of floaters, or he would just rip someone up on defense. But I feel like that's just not a very reliable offense, and you can't just do that every game and win. And you have to have sort of a win condition, I guess. And like for the Nets, it would be one of their guys isoing, or for the Lakers, it's LeBron playmaking. But Giannis playmaking is not as good as most win conditions for other teams, and that's where I think if they have to get into a grinded out type of game a lot versus a team like the Heat where they have lost in the past, it could be the exact same thing that we've seen, and that is very concerning if I'm a Bucks fan.
I will say one thing if I'm a Bucks fan. Two things that you can look at as positive. Like, we've obviously hammered on Giannis, the fact that it looks the exact same, the fact that his game, even though there were some things, especially the last 2 months of the season, that should have made you optimistic about him as a shooter and maybe his post game a little bit, it looked the exact same, and the exact same defense seemed to have him confused, stifled, frustrated, and all of that. Two things. One of the biggest problems with the Bucks, and it was again a problem, and it's just the way Coach Bud has them play defense, with Brook Lopez always sitting in the lane instead of trapping screens and all of that, is that they're a pathetic 3-point shooting defending team, and that really has hurt them in the playoffs. You know, Fred VanVleet killed them 2 years ago. Last year it was Jay Crowder, it was Goran Dragic, it was a boy wonder Tyler Hero, it was a variety of different people making shots. They once again struggled a little bit. Obviously, Duncan Robinson got off and made 7 threes, but Drew Holiday's perimeter defense is going to help that, especially down the stretch of games, because there will be a little more ISO, and Drew Holiday is not going to give up threes in one-on-one because he's such a good defender. And then the other thing is, I've always felt that Chris Middleton has the game to be a legitimate closer. But for whatever reason, I mean, obviously, when you have Giannis Antetokounmpo, a 2-time MVP, the Bucks go to him a lot. Even in the regular season when they do play close games, and he shoots a lot of ugly 20-footers or 18-footers that don't look right. They got to get the ball to Chris Middleton like they did today. He's got an insane mid-range game. He's a very, very good shooter. He can make a lot of tough shots. They need him being aggressive, taking 20, 25 shots, and they need him taking 4 or 5 shots in a close game down the stretch, because like he made it today, he can make those kinds of shots. And he might not be, your cinch all NBA number 2, but he's a legitimate all-star, like a top 25 player in the league. And he's just capable of hitting those big shots, which is really all that they need. They just need him to consistently hit big shots down the stretch to match what Jimmy Butler will likely do over the next, how many ever games are left in the series. And I think he's capable of doing that. So that's positives for the Bucks, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. We've been kind of on the gloom side, but it's not all doom and gloom for them. They still won, even though maybe Giannis didn't have the game they wanted, and there was other bright spots with Bobby Portis turning back the clock for whatever reason, and other guys stepping in. So it is not all doom and gloom for the Bucks, but what we saw to Giannis maybe has us a little on the concern side, regardless of the win. Moving on, though, we got our favorite topic. I think every single media person has to talk about this because it's pretty crazy. This year, they're the defending champs, the Lakers are, and they're a 7 seed now, and they're playing the Suns in the first round. But they're healthy now. They have LeBron and AD on the court at the same time. And I guess the question we have now is, can LeBron take them to the championship? Will they only get Western Conference Finals, or will they get bounced in round 1? Nolan, how far do you think LeBron James can take the Lakers this year?
So I think with that question, the biggest thing is obviously injuries. Him and AD, if they can stay healthy, I really do think they could make a return to the finals. I could totally see it happen. However, this first series is I'm most interested in this series because I really do think they could be beat first round. I think the Suns team has momentum. They're clicking together, got the chemistry, and I think the Lakers could go home first round. So, I don't really have a good question to this. I could see them going all the way, or I could see them losing first round. And I think the main thing for me is just injuries. And then I guess with the supporting cast, always up or down, but we'll see with that. But that's my initial thoughts. What about you, Vish or Blake?
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on this one. To me, it's either first round or they're going to the finals. This Suns team, to me, is going to be their toughest opponent. And I mean, obviously injuries, like, on one hand, I feel like LeBron's okay because he's always been okay. But then I think back to the groin when he came back in 2019 and he was healthy but hurt. And like you had Mario Hezonja blocking him and all of that. And he clearly wasn't as explosive. And I thought the playing game against the Warriors, I thought it looked bad from the Lakers' perspective. I thought they played a pretty bad basketball game. Now, they did enough to win. LeBron hit a crazy shot, but it didn't look like something where I feel like, oh, I'm confident, especially when I feel like they have their toughest series up front. The Suns are serious. Obviously, the Lakers defense can be very dominant when they're on point and clicking. But the one advantage the Suns have and any team with a really, really good point guard has is that they'll orchestrate good offense even if you play good defense. And Chris Paul will get them into the right looks and the right people the ball constantly, and they'll have run good offense. So to me, it's if they beat the Suns, I mean, I like the Clippers. I like their talent a lot. I don't see them beating the Lakers and beating LeBron. I don't see Dallas beating them. I definitely don't see Denver, Utah. I mean, impressive season. No way they're beating the Lakers. To me, it's the Suns. If the Suns they beat the Suns in round one, to me they'll be right as barring injury, they'll be right back there and right there challenging for a championship against whoever's in the East that comes out.
Interesting. So my take's a little different than you guys, I guess. I think they'll beat the Suns. I know the Suns have been amazing this year, but I just trust the fact that LeBron and AD are the two best players on the court, and bottom line, that's kind of how playoff basketball works. But the Suns definitely this should be one of the better series in the first round. But I am definitely concerned about LeBron's health and the fact that quotes are coming out that he's playing on one leg. That concerns me greatly, and the fact that they don't have a second guy who can play make for others efficiently. Now, Anthony Davis is really good, but he's not the type of guy that's going to go drop like 8-9 assists a game. They lost playoff Rondo from last year who could kind of do that, and that's a major loss for them. Schroeder, I'm not completely sold on him yet, although he did do decent, I guess. But I haven't seen playmaking enough from him. And then besides that, they have like Caruso and a bunch of shooters. So if LeBron's truly on one leg and the defenses are his focal point, I guess the war of attrition is kind of going to set in my mind for him. And if they do play a team like the Clippers that have wing defenders to stop him, I don't see them getting past them. And there's other teams too that have other good wing defenders and guys that can slow down Anthony Davis. Because Anthony Davis, although he didn't look the best against Draymond Green, he still dropped 50% shooting and over 20 points. So how can you complain at that? But I'm just concerned when your main playmakers, quote unquote, on one leg. But I mean, we've seen this story time and time again. LeBron makes the finals every year for some reason. And I wouldn't be surprised if they made it. But I got them bouncing in the Western Conference Finals. And it's just mainly due to the one leg thing. And their team just really has not looked like the dominant Lakers team of last year. Beating a Warriors team with Steph Curry and their next best player being Andrew Wiggins by only a couple points and needing LeBron to hit a 30-footer to win, like that does concern me. So I only have him Western Conference.
Yeah, one thing to me that was interesting is in the start of the season, I thought that this Lakers team had a better supporting cast than last year. And as the season's progressed, that just claim has gotten more into question, at least on my side of things. And I think in their most recent game is the biggest kind of staple point in that, with the Warriors being a pretty damaged team in terms of injuries and the Lakers not really having anyone else besides LeBron and AD really stepping up too much. So I think one guy who could make a difference who did last year, I look at KCP, always in the corner, hitting big threes. So that's one guy I'll be looking for, but I'm very curious on the supporting cast outside of LeBron and AD.
I was gonna actually make the same exact point. I thought the Lakers supporting cast got better, but like Trez Harrell, he's kind of a little unplayable, and Dennis Schroeder is way too indecisive and way too inconsistent as a defender. Where it's like you can play him only 30 minutes. Like they look better with Caruso on the floor just because when you pass it to Caruso, he's ready to shoot. And Dennis Schroeder has that weird little pump fake and then takes the half jab step and then goes into the lane and does some floater where he falls over looking for a call. It's not working as smoothly as I thought it would, even though Dennis Schroeder is a very good player and Montrezl Harrell is a former sixth man of the year. And then Kuzma is kind of a wild card. I just think there's too much inconsistency. And I think they missed the energy that JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard brought. They didn't do that much, but they played very good defense, which all the Lakers do, besides maybe Montrezl Harrell. And they brought a lot of energy, and I think they missed that a little bit. I still expect, as long as LeBron and AD are healthy and they beat the Suns, I expect them to run through the West just because, like, I think, Blake, you mentioned that when you have the two best players on the court, they will have the two best players on the court against everybody they face, except for maybe Denver, maybe the Clippers, and maybe Dallas. Those are probably the three teams I would say that have a player that might be better than Anthony Davis. So from that standpoint, they should be okay. But yeah, I do think there's a little more cause for concern just because you're so unsure about LeBron's health.
Definitely. And I wanted to bring up too, JaVale McGee is such an upgrade over Andre Drummond in my mind, in the fact that he knew what he was doing. All he was there was dunking and rebounding, and there was nothing more. You didn't need to post him up. But I feel like with Drummond, like they post him up like way more than necessary. Like he's really not the best offensive player. Like he snags boards, and that's great. But when he snags boards and just he misses a layup, it's really not like it's a net negative because you're not really gaining anything from it. And his offense is just bully ball, but I feel like that's just not going to work with playoff intensity and facing the better center. So in a way, almost JaVale McGee is just such a better fit. And maybe Marcus Gasol's a little too old and slow, but I feel like he stretches the floor a lot better for them and provides way, way, way better passing. But yeah, I think the inconsistencies with the supporting cast, and maybe they will figure it out because I mean last year they did with Rondo and KCP just absolutely electric from the corner, and you know Kuzma can always turn it on sometimes, but it's tough to say because this Lakers team this year has just not looked as good as I guess we all thought they would.
Can we just before we move on, can we talk about Drummond for a bit?
Sure.
Like I'm a Pistons fan. Andre Drummond is just a rebounder. That is what he is. That's what he's always been. He's just an athletic rebounder. He doesn't have a good post game. He has inconsistent touch around the rim. He's a horrible free throw shooter. He's actually a terrible defender for a guy that's 7'1", 250. He does not move and contest shots that well. He is really a liability for them. And if they do beat the Suns and they have to play Nikola Jokic in the second round, I promise if Andre Drummond's playing 30 minutes a night, which he shouldn't, Nikola Jokic will average 35 in that series because I watched Joel Embiid every time they played the Sixers, baby Andre Drummond. And I expect Nikola Jokic to do the same thing. I actually think you talked about how much of an upgrade JaVale McGee. I would say JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard both are better players and better fits for them than Andre Drummond.
Yeah, I would agree on that. And I think that, yeah, Drummond, he's a better rebounder, but at that point, you really don't have too many improvements. And I do think a big thing that you mentioned, Blake, was just kind of the energy and the chemistry that they brought to like the bench mob, even when they weren't playing, where I don't see really Drummond doing too much in that regard. And I think the chemistry is just a big thing that I don't really see Drummond bringing the things or the attributes that I saw with JaVale and Dwight. So I think that's a pretty big thing.
Mm-hmm, definitely. So I think final takes. I think Western Conference Finals, Vish and Nolan are either first round bust or probably make it to the finals.
Take, on the record, first round out. The Lake Show ain't getting past.
Okay.
On the record.
He's a big CP3 fan, so cut him some slack on that. But no, for me it's if they beat the Suns, they will be in the finals. If they don't beat the Suns, obviously they're out in the first.
They're going home.
Yeah.
They'll be the team. I think they're the team to watch in the West, and you know they obviously have the firepower, but can they put it all together is the question. But the Clippers, the other team in Los Angeles, they played a game today against the Mavericks. They lost. They came out a little slow, clawed back, and then just lost in the end. But are you guys concerned about their performance and how their maybe newly improved team looked against this Mavericks team that they beat last year, but they have Porzingis now, who's their second best player? So Nolan, thoughts?
Yeah, so I don't think they should be too concerned just because of the vast difference in the shooting versus the Mavs and them in terms of percentages. Like, I don't really think there's going to be that much of a divide going forward. The one thing that I would say did kind of concern me is towards the end of the game, their offense towards the end. I think they settled for a lot of jumpers that Kawhi and PG can make jumpers. They have very good jump shots, but I think they can always do a little bit more to find a better shot. I don't think the defenders that they're going up against are anything super special. I think they can get down low and then either create a better shot than just a mid-range or a three-point jumper, or even draw a double and then feed one of the big men. So I would say in terms of the entire game, I don't think they should be too concerned, but I think they should have a little bit better of a game plan, in my opinion, about down the stretch offense. But what are your thoughts, Vish?
I don't think they should be that concerned. I think there were a lot of things that went wrong that I don't expect to go wrong throughout the series. Obviously, it's a really tough series because Luka Doncic is like James Harden or LeBron. He's one of those players who can carry an entire offense. And if he's got the ball in his hands, that offense is going to be very good because they'll get good shots because he's a great decision maker. And he's also a very, very good scorer. But I look at it and I felt like, the Clippers shot 75% from the free throw line. They're the best free throw shooting team in the NBA. Kawhi Leonard missed 2 free throws. He's a 90% free throw shooter. Those things are not going to happen unless they just have terrible, terrible series. I don't expect those things to happen. The Clippers also are the best 3-point shooting team in the NBA. Dallas was 17 for 36 from 3. The Clippers shot 28%, 11 for 40, and Marcus Morris, who's a 50% 3-point shooter, was 0 for 6. Paul George is a 44% 3-point shooter, shot 2 for 8. So I don't expect those type things to really, really be an issue for them. I would say the only cause for concern is the fact that I don't know if Serge Ibaka, if it's a health thing, but they can't start Zubac. One of my favorite things about the Clippers this year was that they brought in Serge Ibaka, and Serge Ibaka meant that they could actually switch everything. Zubac is still a bad defensive player. He's improved, but he's still a bad defensive player. And Luka Doncic basically had his barbecue chicken way with Zubac, so that would maybe be my only concern. But let me continue on why I'm not concerned. So I talked about the Clippers shooting itself. I also don't think Dallas is going to shoot that well. Luka Doncic made 5 threes. Luka Doncic is a career, 32, 33% 3-point shooter. He shot 35 this year. He averages making 2 threes a game, but it takes him 8 attempts or 2.5, basically 3 threes a game on 8 attempts. So I don't expect Luka Doncic to make 5 threes, especially contested ones, the way he was making them today. I don't expect Tim Hardaway and Dorian Finney-Smith to shoot the ball the way they did. The Mavericks are obviously going to be a very, very tough team because of Luka Doncic, but I don't expect the Clippers to have the type of problems that they had today, just because I felt like it was kind of an anomaly game where every shot, the Mavericks shot lights out and the Clippers didn't shoot the ball well. I do think your point is valid, Noel, but I'll let Blake elaborate on that a bit more about their late game offense, because I also felt it looked a little stagnant. And Kawhi Leonard at the top of the key when he's getting trapped or doubled is not the way you want to run your late game offense.
Yeah, that was good points. I thought the shooting was the main thing. Tim Hardaway Jr. is a really good shooter, but he was shooting unconscious. He was off the dribble, just pulling in Kawhi's face. And if he was hitting it consistently, but I highly doubt that he will be able to do that for a full series. Finney-Smith shot incredibly well also. He's a pretty good shooter, but again, these guys shooting over 50% is just that's unreal. In Luka, I thought towards the end of the game, I think we saw what will actually happen, and he hit 3 step backs in the first half, and he was pulling them in the second half, and they were not going in. I think he airballed 1 or 2 or just clanked them off the rim, not close. And that's more of his shooting. And his shooting is really – he takes some bad shots. And I know he obviously has a bunch of highlight 3 step backs where he just makes someone look bad, but obviously for every one of those, there's 4 other ones where it's just not close. So those shots concern me. And then the late game offense point that you guys both mentioned, I really like that. And I think having Rondo in there more could help with that because he is actually a very good playmaker. And for whatever reason, no one can explain it, but playoff Rondo is real. It gets mentioned and people doubt him, but he was making threes out there for no good reason. And I think he'll continue to do that. But the thing with their offense late game was, they'd have Paul George or Kawhi at the top of the key. There'd be a double, and then they'd have basically 2 passes, and then they're back to square one where it's okay, we have Kawhi and Paul at the top of the key, and it's all right, 10 seconds are off the clock. Nothing got accomplished. So maybe that's more cutters. Maybe that's having people that are better at passing out there, like Rondo, who can facilitate more. But, it is concerning when they can't really get an open look off of a double team. From Kawhi and Paul. And then my last thing I wanted to talk about, which actually is concerning for me from the Clippers standpoint, is when Luka was getting doubled, like more close to the ends of the game, they were getting very clean looks. Like it would be a double, and then it'd just be a strictly 4-on-3, and one of the guys who was doubling Luka couldn't get back. And for me, that's concerning in the fact that Porzingis was taking one-on-ones. He'd either have a clean dunk or he'd be one-on-one against like Nicholas Batum, and it's like, all right, he has to score this, And there was a lot of that for me, or open cutters getting quick dunks, whether that was Hardaway Jr. or Porzingis or Finney Smith. So that part did concern me for the Clippers in the sense that they weren't able to guard him one-on-one at all. And you'd think like, all right, Paul George, Batum, Kawhi, they're all really good defenders. You could throw Beverly in there. But still, one-on-one, they were kind of getting cooked a little bit, considering how well Luka did. So that was just my thought and my thing where the Clippers should actually be concerned.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that if you didn't touch on that. But, yeah, I think it was interesting because we were kind of talking about the offense. But the thing that stuck out to me when I watched the end of the game was how many easy baskets the Mavs got down the stretch. And as much as like they could kind of create some havoc with Rondo playing like uptight and doubling Luka, but I just think that they're going to run into trouble time and time again if they double Luka at the top of the key because of how good a facilitator he is. Mm-hmm. Other guys you can do that too. Like as we mentioned earlier, Giannis. If you double Giannis top of the key, probably not going to find much. Maybe he'll make a pass, but probably not. But Luka Doncic, you really can't do that. And as much of a playmaker as he is, like you said, he wasn't shooting that well in the end of the game. So by them doubling him, I understand the move. But at that point, I might just put a good defender on him and just try to have him stay with him because even though he's such a good player, I'd rather have him take a contested shot than an open Porzingis dunk or Tim Hardaway to the layup. Mm-hmm. So I would totally agree with your take on that, Blake.
So I actually think that they adjusted right to trapping him because he was making shots. But I actually think the original defensive game plan was the right idea because the thing that makes Luka so special is his facilitating, right? Like to me, there's a difference between a good passer and a really good facilitator. Like a good passer, like Giannis or Russell Westbrook or those guys, they can make that one spectacular pass for an assist and all of that, and they're really good passers. But what makes Luka Doncic or a LeBron or a CP3 that sets them apart is when that double is coming, they know how to get rid of the ball, where to get rid of the ball, and when to create easy matchups and easy opportunities for their teammates. That's what Luka Doncic kept doing. He was like, okay, you're going to double me. Bang, I'm going to throw it out to Dorian Finney-Smith. Now it's 4-on-3, and he's going to toss it to Porzingis, and Kawhi is going to get posterized. And they kept making good basketball plays, but I think they had the right idea. Make him make shots again. The thing is that you just don't have Zubac in the game. Don't switch everything when you got Zubac in the game because Zubac is going to be barbecue chicken. But if somebody else switches onto Luka, I think it's the right idea. That step back three, he's a phenomenal player. But I mean, even he's the streakiest shooter I've ever seen. The first shot will be pure. The next shot will be an air ball or he'll hit the backboard or something like that. It's really, really weird. And you just make him make shots like that. And I think they have the right idea. I don't think they should be too worried because I think they should go in with the same game plan. And if he makes shots for 4 games in this series and beats you, well, then just go shake his hand. But I don't expect him to do that. And then the other positive thing was that Paul George had a really strong second half, which is really good to see for the Clippers because we know what happens to Paul George sometimes when he's having a poor game. It compounds to his entire game where his defense, he starts fouling and then complaining about calls. He starts charging. He goes out of control. He starts turning the ball over. He kept his cool. He kept his composure, got himself to the free throw line. He had a really strong second half. It's definitely something to build on. I do expect Paul George to shoot way better throughout this series. I think he will shoot well throughout this series. So I don't think overall there's a lot of concern for the Clippers, but there is obviously a little bit when you're playing against a guy in Luka Doncic who's a top 10, top 5 player in the league, and you're down 0-1.
Mm-hmm. Any more thoughts on all or Vish?
I would just say that the only other thing I can think of that could concern the Clips is that the Mavs got a chip on their shoulder. They lost this matchup last time. They're out for revenge. So in certain parts of the game, I could see them having more intensity and energy just as a team, as a collective, especially if, like, let's say Paul George has a bad game, Kawhi has a bad game, and the Clippers don't really know what to do. I can see that as being a factor of concern. Is the only thing I would say.
I have a question for you guys. Did you guys think the Clippers defended well? Because besides the end of the game when they started trapping, and this is like the last 2-3 minutes, and the Mavs got easy access, like free shots. I actually thought the Clippers played great defense. They were active. They rotated really well. I mean, Dorian Finney-Smith and Tim Hardaway were just making shots. And it wasn't like they were getting wide open looks. They were getting okay looks, which is a product of how special Luka Doncic is a passer. But it was like maybe a half a second of space, and they were drilling them. And if they drill them like that, I mean, there's nothing you can do when a team makes 17 threes on you. Like, you're not going to win if you only make 11. So, like, do you think their defense was really – because I think their defense was okay, and I think if they play the same exact defense and they make shots on Tuesday, they will win.
Oh, yeah. I guess I'll jump in there. Yeah, I would say that aside from the end of the game, no, I didn't have too many problems with their defense. I thought they had a good game plan, and I think what you were saying, Vish, once they switched the game plan to trap Luka more, that's when stuff got out of whack. I think they should have just stayed home with their game plan the entire game and see where it got them.
Yeah, I agree with both you guys. And honestly, like, if Luka hits a step back three, like, you will live with that because more times than not, he's not going to do that consistently. And Tim Hardaway is not going to take 2 dribbles and pull in Kawhi's face consistently. Those are just things that are, if they can do that consistently, you lose and you say, wow, they just played incredibly well. But yeah, like for me, when they started just doubling at the end of the game is when I was like, okay, they're scoring a lot of points, and it's not that like they're hitting contested shots. Like it's a Tim Hardaway layup who's in the lane just cutting and no one's even there, or Porzingis is in the post against a smaller guy, and obviously, he's a really good player, and he didn't even play particularly well. I thought they played great defense on him, considering the height advantage he had, but they were forcing him into bad shots. But at the end of the game, when he was just hitting uncontested layups or shooting over a smaller guy consistently with no help, yeah, you're going to run into problems if that has to happen.
Yeah, and then I would say just one final cause for concern. I know this guy's had an excellent season, but again, as a Pistons fan, I know this guy's game. It's Reggie Jackson and the lack of just conscience and him just taking bad shots in a game where he's not shooting the ball well. I would actually like to see them give more minutes to Terrence Mann, because I actually think, now this is going to sound like a hot take, but I've watched a lot of Clippers basketball this year. I think Terrence Mann is the best defensive point guard on this team. He's a better defensive player than Patrick Beverley, who's a little overrated in my opinion, and he fouls way, way, way too much. I mean, Patrick Beverley, first quarter, I mean, how many times have you seen this story? Puts his hand up like this. He's taken 2 early fouls. He's out of the game by 8 minutes, and you're like 1 foul away from the bonus. Like, this is the story every time he plays, but he's hurt so much. I think Terrence Mann is the best defensive guard on this team. I would actually like to see him get more minutes, just because I also think he's shot the ball decent enough where he is a playable player in this year's playoffs. And I think he is someone that could actually maybe take some minutes on Luka Doncic, and give rest to Kawhi and Paul George and Rondo and Marcus Morris, and do a very, very serviceable job, because I think he's a really good player in that role.
Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't seen too much of Terrence Mann. I know Luke Kennard was in there, and he kind of fell out of the rotation, unfortunately. But one thing I'll say is the Clippers love their former Detroit Pistons players. I mean, you got to love it. They just love the Pistons pipeline. But I think that'll wrap up this episode. So I think bottom line for Clippers is we're not too concerned considering how well the Mavericks shot. But there was a couple of things that we thought they shouldn't have done or they should do in the future to help mitigate how well the Mavericks shot and hopefully win the series. And I think we're ready for the Battle of LA. I think bottom line, I'm excited for that in the playoffs, the series and that. But thank you guys so much for watching, and tune in next time.